Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson. I've got the best ASX code. Well, it's not the code, it's the name of the company. ACDC Metals, back in black, I like to say. The ASX code is ADC. Now, they've got heavy minerals and rare earths projects, 3 projects down in Victoria. Lots of news out today. So I have asked Tom Davidson, he's the CEO, to come and have a chat with us. And for those of you that watched the last time, I spoke with Mark Saxon, one of the directors of the company, on the day they listed, which was January the 17th, only this year. So January the 17th, 2023, they raised 8 million, they listed, and they've been going hard at it. But I want to find out what's happened between January and now. As I talk to Tom, it is sometime in June. It's the King's birthday just gone. So Tom, great to see you. Welcome to Small Caps, and thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Gary. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start off. You're the CEO. Give us a brief overview of ACDC Metals.
So ACDC, so we're right in that critical minerals energy transition space. We have the heavy mineral sand assets in Western Victoria. So we've got 5 tenements consisting of 3 projects, really from that sort of Witchy-proof around to Edenhope space, the Murray Basin. And then we also have the proprietary technology. So the exclusive agreement with Medallion for the Monozyte process. So that's the separation of the rare earth elements. And that's really our sort of key differentiator, where we can that value add downstream processing from mine gate, and rather than transporting and shipping that straight to overseas, which traditionally Australia has always done, is to then now start that value add downstream on Australian shores.
Yes, and I must admit, when I was talking to Mark last time, Tom, I got very excited because I think that to me is so important, that we should be doing that value add onshore if we possibly can. We'll get into a little bit more of that at the moment, but your strategy is to build, I love this, a mine to magnet, and that's that value add.
Yeah, we were pretty excited. I think when we came up with that little picture and the name and the slogan for it, and yeah, I think it really does describe exactly what we're all about and what we want to do. We can, with a heavy mineral sands asset, we would develop a mineral sand plant. And so at the mine gate, we would be selling the traditional HMC, which is your zircon, titania minerals, and then also produce a monazite concentrate. And we would then take that to another processing plant, which would be our Medallion monazite processing. The Medallion plant can also receive monazite from other third parties. So that could be domestically or internationally. So there's sort of 2 independent plants. They can work together, they can develop together, or they can develop independently. And that's the real sort of beauty of it. Yeah.
What's the importance of monazite? Because we're going to be mentioning it quite a lot. And I know I get people say to me, talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. What is monazite? Why is it important?
Yes, so monazite's a mineral, and it contains inside the rare earth elements or the metals that everyone's all excited about at the moment. So monazite contains a lot of the, I think it's 60% rare earths. It contains a lot of the neodymium, praseodymium, a lot of the dymiums that go towards the EV and the battery manufacture. And so traditionally, when these heavy mineral sand assets were being developed, a lot of the plants were ignoring the monazite. It was considered a waste, and they were leaving it behind. And so they would process and pull out the heavy minerals and then leave the monazite behind. There wasn't a big market for it. Rare earths is pretty well like an industrial mineral. It does. It's not like gold where you just produce it onto an open market and it'll get soaked up. And so you really do need to work with your customers and understand their requirements and their demands over the next few months, and so that you can then work with them to sort of meet those requirements.
And is the market, I mean, we all talk about this, the EV revolution and the green tech and all this sort of stuff. Is the market growing? So I kind of want to understand the market supply and demand because of what you have.
Yeah, so you look through the sort of research done by, say, Adamas Intelligence and various other institutes, that we know by 2030 that the requirement for EV batteries is looking to double. And so there needs to be a lot of projects to come online to meet that requirement.
Yep.
And so yeah, there's a massive gap there. Obviously, if it's a tender sort of piece, though, the demand can't get too great that the pricing for it becomes too excessive, and then they'll look to try and remove the need for those rare earths. But whilst that price is at what it is right now, there's a massive demand, and to meet over the next 10, 20 years as we all countries work towards these carbon neutral goals.
Okay, I just want to understand this Medallion monazite process technology, which was, I guess, worked on by Medallion Resources. Are you the only ones with the license? Have you got an exclusive license arrangement within Australia?
Yes. Yeah, so previously Medallion had spent the last sort of 5 to 6 years working with the Saskatchewan Research Council, which is the equivalent of ANSTO in Canada. So they've been busy working away on the technical side, on the flowsheet development, and they've got that to a point of robustness. And we now have that exclusive agreement, the only ones in Australia to use that on the eastern seaboard. So that's New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, and Northern Territory. And so the main steps really now to take that is they did the concept study previously based in the US. Is to then now do a concept study and base that in Australia, Australianize it, localize it with the different sort of operating costs, environmental requirements, and then to also then start to develop the test work with the likes of, say, ANSTO and Stimulus, where we can really validate some of those key process needs. So the first step won't be to go and do a full pilot plant. It'll be to do, we're calling it sort of a validation of the key 3 or 4 key process steps. And so our recent drilling program that we just completed, at the same time as collecting samples for resource development, we also collected about 3 tons worth of heavy mineral sand for development of the Medallion process. So we'll take all that material and run it through, say, Mineral Technologies, where they'll produce a Monazite concentrate for us, and then we can then take that to another test work lab, and then we can then go along and do sort of pre-piloting work on the Medallion Monazite process.
I know it's doing a value add, but does it slow you down, or does it run sort of comparatively alongside, if that makes sense?
So you mean developing the MMP with the mineral sands plant?
Yeah.
So no, they sort of run independently of each other. So the mineral sands plant, we can, and that's pretty a well and tried process. Where we are in the Murray Basin, there's lots of peers around us. There's been previous operations in the past. To get through those stage gates of development with a mineral sands plant is relatively quick to get through to a point of, say, like up to a point of FID. The Medallion process, with all rare earths, it's not simple when you do need to do pilot plants and you do need to build them and raise the capital to go along and get to through those points. And you want to spend more time in the lab to make sure that it's going to work before you commit. And any sort of financial institution, banks will want to see a fully operating, continuous operation pilot plant before committing to it.
Just on that mineral sands plant and the fact that there's a lot of other projects in the area, do you need to build your own plant, or could you utilize somebody else's?
Well, at this stage, I guess with the development that we're going with is, I guess we're looking at what a project would look like with our tenement. So we have a very good understanding of what the capital requirements would be to build a plant to process heavy mineral sands. And so as we would go through the concept studies and the PFS and even to an FS, it would be working on the premise of, yes, having our own plant. Whether in actual reality that would be how it would work, that might be a sort of future point. But I think at this stage, it's really just so we can define a reserve and a resource. They would be the capital requirements to develop that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on today was because you've had an announcement out today. Drum roll, the assays are back and the results are out.
Yes, finally. So I guess just give you the background since January 17. So we said we're going to do lots of drilling across all 3 of our projects. So in mid-May, we finished our 13,000 metres across Goschen Central, where we did 140 holes in the end, nearly 7,000 metres. And we did 3,000 metres at Watcham and about 3,000 metres down at Douglas. So those first pass drilling for all three of those projects was all done on roadside drilling. So a sort of 500 metre to 250 metre spacing along all the roadsides. So low impact drilling, very easy access, and especially on Goschen Central, we did see some good stuff in the pan. And so the geos, and we did a very good team on site. The geologists were top notch. And so when they saw some good stuff in the pan, they were on the phone saying, you know, we should be doing a tighter pattern here. Maybe we should look at doing some infill here. And so the results we released last week on the assays, they were the results that we saw from the roadside drilling. And so we were seeing, you know, THM percentages of 6, 8, and 10%, which are amazing. But unfortunately, at the time, we weren't able to announce the mineralogy because we didn't have that in yet. And so based on what we saw on the visual drilling at that time, we decided to go back and do infill drilling. So we did another 70 holes in paddock at a tight pattern where we think there's a good high-grade mineralisation and there's the potential to build a high-grade resource around that. And so, yeah, as you get to the mineralogy, we got that through end of last week. I'm not a geologist, so when I opened up the spreadsheet, I had to call our exploration manager to confirm the numbers that I saw because I thought I was misreading them. And so,
but
yeah,
in a good way, or in a good way, Tom, or
in a good way. So we saw Monazite at 8%, which is double what we typically what we were expecting to see. So and Monazite is one of the real valuable heavy minerals. So all of these projects in the Murray Basin, their Monazite or their rare earth concentrate is one of their real big revenue drivers. So that was really exciting to see. Zircon, which makes up the HMC concentrate, where that has come through at 35%. So that's typically you see sort of around that 25% grades. So at 35, so that's nearly 50% more. So Zircon and Monazite are really two big, heavy, very heavy mineral, valuable ones that you want to see, and that's what we've got.
Did that surprise you? Because I want to unpack that a little bit, because you said that the zircon's important, and what was the other one? The
Monazite.
Monazite. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all these terminologies, Tom.
I know there's lots of minerals there to get through.
And I'm not even a geologist. You're a mechanical engineer. I just get totally lost. But anyway, the zircon and the monazite, are you saying that they are a lot higher in concentration than other projects within Australia?
Not with, I guess, like, so you've got the Lucas projects up in Balranald. That's a big project. That's well over in that sort of range of the zircon. But yeah, those numbers, admittedly it's only on one hole, but we think the geology sort of shows that there is a headland through the tenement there, and we believe that we're going to see a good concentration of minerals, and that's where we've gone along that infill drilling that I mentioned earlier, follows that headland down. So over the next probably 2 to 4 weeks, those assays will be getting processed, and so hopefully we have more results coming. And so hopefully in sort of probably 2 months' time, we'll be able to report assays and mineralogy. So we're trying to get the QEM scans through as quick as possible for more mineralogy results to come out to validate that. And then obviously all that data then gets off to Snowden, our resource geologist, so they can go along and build a JORC resource. And so we're hoping we'll have a nice high-grade resource, as well as then probably an inferred lower grade across the tenement there.
You've got 3 projects. You've mentioned all 3 of them, but from our audience point of view, you raised 8 million at the IPO, which we mentioned was the 17th of January this year. Looks like you're pretty well funded, having raised that money. I guess what we'd all like to know is, where are those funds being deployed? Because you've got 3 projects. You've got Goschen Central. Is that your lead project? That's where you've done the most amount of drilling, isn't it?
Yeah. So based on the back in the 80s and the 90s, CRA went through that whole Murray Basin area, and so based on the historical results, we knew the most about Goshen going into this program. And there'd also been previous drilling done there by Luca and by other vendors. And so we did know the most about Goshen, but the intent was so that we would make sure that we were deploying funds into the correct project. That's why we went and did drilling across all three, to make sure that we weren't missing something, or that there's something better over here. We should be targeting this. We haven't seen all the results come back from the lab yet for Watcham or Douglas.
Okay.
They should be getting processed now, going through the lab, so they should be coming back shortly as well. But yes, at this stage, based on visually what we've seen in the field, the Goshen one just is stood out, and that's why we went and did that further infill. And then I guess these results from last week and the results from today are really validating, that thinking, and that's why internally everyone's all excited about that, and can't wait to be able to put a JORC resource around this.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. When is the JORC resource going to be out? What are you looking at? Have you got to do a lot more work before you put that out?
So we've been working on Q3 of this year. Has been our sort of plan since day one. So we're in June now. We've got the roadside drilling back for Goshen. The infill drilling is due back shortly, so that should be coming back in the next month. And then Snowdon have already started preparing the JORC resource, so the wireframing all that's been set up. So yeah, we're on track for that mid sort of Q3 timing. We should then working well with getting that resource around that Goshen project, and at the same time we'll be engaging other consultants to start the scoping studies for the mineral sands plant as well.
So with these three projects, are they all around the Murray Basin? Are they all along the same sort of geological structure, or are they very separate?
They're all in the Murray Basin, but they are slightly a bit different. So the Goshen project is more of a WIM style, so the finer grain, sort of a lot more expansive type projects. So similar to what you see with say like VHM and those just to the north of us. The Watcham is more of a strand line, so coarser, and a narrower mineralisation zone. And then down with Douglas is probably looking like it's more of a strand line as well.
So is strandline going to be more complicated to get underway? Because you just said coarser. To me, that sounds like more energy intensive when it comes to a process technology.
No, because I guess with the mineral sands, it's not grinding, not like a typical hard rock, like with gold or anything like that. It should require less energy, and the more proven technology that's been used in the past as well with the separation of the coarser minerals. When it gets finer, that's when it gets a bit more into more plant required, to more spirals and screens and that, to be able to separate out those fine minerals. So and I guess so at this stage the focus will remain on Goschen Central. We're still, once results come back in, and I guess at the moment as well, farmers have put their crops in, so we won't be getting back onto the tenements. And I think Victoria's had a lot of rain in the last week, I believe. So I don't think we'll be getting down there too much to any roadside drilling at the moment. So probably once the crops get off towards the end of the year, we'll be looking to go back and do some further drilling on maybe Goshen and Watcham.
So what can shareholders and potential shareholders be looking for? We're mid-year now. We talked about a JORC resource in the third quarter of this year, potentially. What's the news flow like? Just paint the picture, if you could, Tom, about the work you're doing, because you just said we can't get back on because of the cropping at the moment.
Yeah, and so we don't need to get back on to do drilling to meet the JORC resource requirement. So we're still on track, like we stated in the prospectus, for a JORC resource in Q3. At the same time, we've been in discussions with Mineral Technologies, who are the gurus in the mineral sand plant development space. So we'll be looking to kickstart off scoping studies on the mineral sands plant, and so that'll sort of allow us to wrap around a report that'll have, here's the JORC resource, here's the capital requirements to process that, here's the operating requirements around that, and then we can develop a financial cash model, techno-economic model to give us an evaluation on that project. So that's the sort of mineral sands side of things.
And just on that, where would you go? Where would you build that plant? In Victoria?
Yeah, so that plant would be in Victoria. So that plant would be near the tenement somewhere.
Okay.
at this stage, at scoping level, yeah, we don't need to be too specific about where it's going to be. In the region of the tenement, there's obviously infrastructure requirements of rail and power and water needs. And at scoping study level, we probably don't need to get too focused on that. When we get to PFS and it starts getting a bit more real, then that would be then, when we start looking at where it's going to be. But that'll probably be in about a year's time. At the moment, the focus is really JORC resource scoping study for the MSP. And then that'll give us some really good numbers to talk about, quantums of MPVs, IRR, and then with our resource, obviously, how many tons in the ground, grade, and to really sort of show how much of a showcase project this can be.
Tom, something's come to my mind just now, which is what led you to take up the CEO role? What did you find about this project that you thought, yeah, I can get my hands on, wrap my head around that one and give it a good red hot crack?
I guess I have done rare earth projects in the past, and so yes, they can be challenging, especially getting through that test work phase and that. But I guess the whole energy transition, the critical minerals space at the moment. I guess my last couple of years I've been doing a lot in gold and base metals, and so it was good to get that critical minerals. And Mark gave me the phone call and said, what are you doing? I was pretty keen to get involved and excited. And I guess I'm originally from Keith, which is only probably about 2 hours away from the Murray Basin area there. And I like playing in this early sort of stage of projects. How should the company and the business strategy be and align, and what are we targeting and trying to do? And it's an exciting piece at the moment. It's busy. I guess not only with the MSP, but also with the MMP as well. That's a busy piece as well.
I want to come back to LAD separation in a moment, but before I do, this announcement out today where it has surprised you on the upside, and you said you did a double take on those numbers. Can you just explain a little bit further about why that's critically important to this project? Are there any in the rare earths category? You talk about zircon and monazite, but are there any other minerals there, or is it complicated?
So I guess the mineralogy, I guess the main ones you sort of look at is there's the aluminite, the rutile, which is sort of your titania minerals, and so there's a lot of that. They're not as probably higher value. They're still valuable metals. They still contribute to the revenue, but the zircon really is the big one. Okay. And also the monazite. And so I guess also as well, I forgot to mention before, so as I guess is one of the reasons everyone's been asking where are your assays, where's your mineralogy. When we were talking to the lab about a week or two ago as to why this was taking so long, and talking to the lady that had been doing the grain counting on the monazite, she did have to send it off site to get third-party verification. She didn't quite believe the amount of monazite she was seeing in the sample.
Oh, really?
So that was pleasing to hear. It wasn't as if it was the other way.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's fine. Let's make sure it's all there, and it is that. And so very happy.
So the hold up with the results coming out was a positive rather than a negative. It wasn't
exactly
labs being busy. You just had to get third party.
Exactly, and further validation of the results being correct, and they are what they are. So yeah, it's great.
So that's now been validated, all good. And so every time someone looks at it and goes, these seem a bit high, you're going, no, third party validation done.
Exactly, Kerry. Yes, and hopefully the other results that come through shortly for the infill, back that up and sort of show that there's consistency through the resource, and that'd be amazing.
And when are those going to be coming out, do you think?
I think it's probably going to be mid-June. Yeah, it's probably going to be towards the end of July, I think, for them.
Okay. I don't fully understand this part of the mix within ACDC Metals, but the LAD separation technology that Medallion licensed from Purdue. Talk to us about that. Are you involved with that at all?
So I guess. So the quick overview of what it is. So the MMP process, so the rare earth separation, is essentially a caustic crack. So you feed monazite in, and what comes out is you get a uranium thorium product, you get a cerium product, and you get the rare earth carbonate product and a cerium product as well. But the rare earth carbonate is together, and the LAD, which is a chromatography process, then separates out that RE carbonate into its individual oxides.
Oh.
And then once you separate that out, then you can then send it off then to the next process, which is alloying and metallizing, and then after that it's magnet making. So rather than traditionally solvent extraction is the process to do that rare earth separation, and so the chromatography is a far smaller footprint, less capital intensive, but it's not as far as developed. So that's when ACDC Medallion drew up the agreements, we locked in the MMP. That was very well understood. The flow sheet's very robust technically, and so it was easy to put an agreement around that. The LAD wasn't as far as developed, and so where we got to was a letter of agreement that when it got to a point that makes sense, we could then sit down and do that agreement. Okay. So it's very much in sort of the forefront of our thinking, that when we talk about where we're going to locate the MMP plant. So we were over in South Australia recently talking with a few different groups over there about where it could be placed, and our thinking, and I guess our discussions were all based around there's an MMP and then we have an LAD that we could bolt on afterwards.
Right.
And that's the whole story as part of, as you mentioned before, the mine to magnet is there's all these downstream value add parts you can just bolt on. And so that's really the opportunity for Australia or for either state, that you can start off with the MMP and then that will attract the next downstream processes.
So the LAD separation is more process down.
The next step down. And because we know based on where all of those processes are done now, so I think it's, at the moment, the mining of the rare earth minerals, 60% of it is done in China, and then every other step after that is about over 90%. So there's a massive opportunity to grab some of that back and bring it back into Australia. And we know also that there's probably 85% of the downstream value is post-mining activity. So 60%. There's a massive chunk there to have an opportunity to grab.
Okay, well, it's exciting times for ACDC. We're running out of time, Tom. Sorry about this, but it's quite a lot to get through. Let's wrap it up and give me 3 reasons why people should be sitting up and taking notice of ACDC right now.
Well, I think our drill program is complete. Our assays are back and great. Monazite is double what we thought. Zircon's 50% more. They're the 2 big ones that you want to have in your assemblage, and we've got them in there. We think there's more there. And so we should be targeting a nice high-grade resource. We've been doing what we said we're going to do from the very start. We're hitting our objectives, hitting our milestones, and so far we've been delivering. We're well-financed. The money we raised over the IPO is going to see us easily through to the next year or so, where we can meet these milestones of JORC resource, scoping study development, getting a big test work program undergo for the MMP as well with ANSTO. And also, I guess our final probably key differentiator is the rare earth separation piece, the technology, the value add. So we're not just going to produce these concentrates and ship them off overseas. We're going to get them onshore and process them down in here in Australia.
Well, you have to come back when more news comes out as the year progresses. But for now, for a company that only listed on the ASX on the 17th of January, and I'm talking to you on the mid-June, you've done a lot of work. So congratulations, and may the games begin. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Kerry. Thanks for the support.